of wrap up things. Thank you, Ndumo, and thank you, Brenda. We hope to see you in Pakistan soon and look forward to the kind of work you're doing. I'm excited. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again. This is going to be a very interesting panel discussion with the international speakers. Mr. Fazil from the Learning Hut is going to be the moderator for this session. Over to you, Fazil.
Thank you, Anza. First of all, a little confusion. This is not actually a panel discussion. This is a case study from a project that was done in Africa about a year ago. I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce, first of all, the guests that we have for this thing. The project essentially was an e-learning capacity building, pan-African for faculty, for university faculty all across Africa. We have Ms. Ndumo Dlamini. Ndumo is the Director of IT and ICT Services and Knowledge Management for the African Association of Universities. She was the brainchild of this project. The project was her brainchild, and she was working on building up the capacity. Ndumo has 27 years of experience. She's worked in a lot of different sectors, and she has worked in agriculture. She's worked in railway and a lot of different things. For more than 20 years now, she's been involved with IT, ICT, e-learning, virtual trainings, and all sorts of things. So she is very focused and very amped in all of e-learning and all of these things. We also have Brenda Justin Melanson. This is Brenda Justin Melanson. She's learning technologies and OER consultant with 20 plus years of experience in virtual learning itself. Just to give you an example, she's been working with Moodle since 2003. Her main areas have been capacity building, knowledge transfer, course development, online provision, and policy. She's a non-resident research assistant at Johannesburg University, and that's only part of what she does. She also serves on a lot of different panels and journals in terms of reviews, capacities, and all of that. I'm Fazil Wahab. I run a small e-learning company. We offer end-to-end solutions here in Pakistan. We are based out of Karachi, but we're working throughout this thing. So without any further waiting, how we're going to run through this is we're going to, the three of us are going to present to you a very short presentation about what was done during this time, during this project, and how we went about it, and then we're going to be open for questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Ndumo to take it to start off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Fazil. It's a pleasure to be in this meeting. I've asked my colleagues, if I'm not audible, please do inform me so that you can take over because my connection is not so good. Welcome to our presentation where we will be evaluating the Association of African Universities initiative on e-learning capacity building. And we are looking at the case study of Lubane State Educational Resources and Moodle during the height of the global pandemic. The role of the Association of African Universities initiative from a number of universities for their capacities to be built. And my role in the initiative was to lead it and find the best way that we could implement it. So our key objectives were to provide a scalable continental educational technology capacity development initiative. And the context of this was that we needed to roll out an initiative at a low cost using open source software and open educational resources. And as you know, because we are in Africa and the university that we were working with is a rural university, So we have to think about low technology environment and how we service it. Because of funding limited source volunteers or facilitators to support the deployment of the capacity building initiative. So that is the background of the initiative. I would now like to hand over to Brenda for the next slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadumo. This slide, as you can see, looks quite busy, and that's because we had a very busy time with Nadumo pulling in so many contacts to make this happen. So if we start on the right-hand side, the AAU recruited people through Facebook, volunteers. Nadumo had over 90 Moodle experts, that's what we were calling for initially, who volunteered. And this was at the beginning of the pandemic, early last year, I think it was in about May, and especially asked for people who were residing in Africa or the diaspora. So those were we had facilitators, we had mentors, we then worked out a server team. And later on, we also developed an evaluation team, and we have presented a paper on evaluation at the Open Education Global Conference in November 2020. So those were the people that were involved. On the left-hand side, we had Lupani State University, which is in Zimbabwe, and they offered their Moodle server for our use. We also had a company based in Austria called Meet Modulo, who offered their Big Blue Button, which is a live conferencing session. They offered that to us a full commercial version, free of charge. So these were all the players. The institutional beneficiary was the Lupani State University. I think they had about 250 staff that were involved as beneficiaries in the training. The AAU were pulling everything together in the middle. Then we had something quite interesting on the left-hand side here, is as soon as Nadumo called for this, Nadumo and I go way back, probably 20 years as well. And I have been involved in an EdTech project at the Eduardo Mondlane University in Mozambique, a Portuguese language university, and had been developing materials for them. And that institution very kindly released quite preemptively their materials as open education resources licensed for use, and that is how we were able to reuse them. Now, that project had developed the materials for blended learning. We'd already run the pilot, trained facilitators, etc., for the rollout when the pandemic hit. So at that point, Emerge Africa, which is a network, came on board, and I was then working with Emerge Africa, and we repurposed the materials for fully online provision. So it was a truly African collective with a lot of different people pitching in over there. So I'm going to hand back to Nadumo now to talk a little bit about what we learned.
Thank you very much, Brenda. I think what we learned was that there was an opportunity to replicate this initiative and also spread it to more institutions that needed the capacity building. Of course, we were very cognizant of the lesson concerning sustainability, especially how do we motivate the volunteer facilitators to continue working with us. Because the initiative also was internet intensive, We learned also how to use less synchronous processes in terms of engagement to record some of the lessons and to also build the capacity within an institution to be able to provide ongoing support for the faculty. In terms of replicability and sustainability, it's also very important to understand that the open educational resources create a great opportunity for us to keep reusing what had been developed for different situations. For example, the content was developed for a Portuguese-speaking institution, but we were able to use them in an English-speaking institution. And we found, of course, that the volunteer facility, I think our lesson there was that there's quite a lot of people in the world or in the continent who are willing to contribute to initiatives that can make a difference. So we learned that it's not always about money, but people want to be part of something and also build the knowledge of the society. We found also the participants highly engaged, but they were committed, and there were about over 200 people attending the sessions faithfully during this process. Basically, that's where I'll leave it. I would like to hand back to my colleague, Brenda. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you, Nadumo. I just thought I'd talk a little bit about the materials. That was an area that I was very involved with. As a result of the evaluation, we discovered that the participants were very happy with the structured materials and the way they were structured, that they were fit for purpose in the context of a developing country context, and the fact that they were licensed for reuse, just as Nadumo mentioned earlier, that really made everything work very well. In terms of the materials, we had a sort of startup week, then we had 2 stages. We had a midway break week, which was voluntary for people to just do a little bit of extension, others could catch up. And then we had 2 stages 3 and 4, and then we had a consolidation week right at the end. So it really was paced quite well. In terms of the actual processes that we used and the mode of provision, what we found was that we could work 100% online, even in this low-tech environment. People were using Moodle Mobile on their phones. If they couldn't access the live sessions, we used to put the recordings up the same day so people could catch up in their own time. We had a lot of synchronous sessions because the Nepali State University felt quite nervous. This was in May last year of going into this mode so suddenly. We've since reworked the materials. I've been working with the Eduardo Mondlane University. We've really revised them again for fully online provision, but the way we've designed them is that they can be used as blended as well. And we've cut down the number of synchronous sessions over there. The one thing that I'd really like to mention is that the way that these materials are staged, we ask the participants to each have what we call a practice course, or a course that they want to redesign and put online. And then during those, the startup week and the following 4 stages, we take them through step by step, adding components to the course. So at the end of this whole process, what each participant had was they were well on their way to having a new online course and various components, etc. So that was something that I felt contributed towards the sense of achievement at the end. And if I'm not mistaken, Lupani State University reported in the evaluation that they had an over 90% completion and achievement of going through the entire course, which was a huge commitment on their part. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Fazil, who was one of our volunteer facilitators on this African initiative, which we really valued. Thank you, Fazil, to start thinking about this in a slightly different context.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Nadumo. Just to give our viewers a little more context on this, we have been, as the Learning Hut, we were involved with this whole project right from the inception stage. And we were very lucky for that because we had a lot of learnings. And over the last about 8 to 9 months, we have been working with Brenda and quite a few other people from that group itself to replicate or build up something like that in Pakistan. Essentially, what we came up with in this was that, and so whatever discussion we're going to have from this point onwards is going to be how we bring that to Pakistan and how the capacity and the elements can be brought together. We have identified about 4 different areas that need to be worked on if you want your e-learning system or your e-learning or your edtech system to work on, to succeed. The first is content. Obviously, we're talking about a national curriculum in Pakistan and those sorts of things. There's also a question we have about the national curriculum, which we're going to address at the end of this presentation. There's tools. Tools have 2 parts. One is the LMS, whatever you put. So this we used Moodle in this African model, but it was completely independent of the platform. So you could be using any other platform for this. And the delivery, as Brenda mentioned, you could use it on your mobile phone. You could use it in different areas. Delivery also requires you to be talking about what kind of activities you could do. There was a very important part of learner experience, as Brenda mentioned. Each faculty member having to take one course, having to go through all the exercise, the ups and downs and all of those things to produce something they produced. And the infrastructure, which is essentially the bandwidth availability, the gadget availability, and all of those things. Brenda, can you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. Because we don't have a lot of time, I'm just going to mention a few things that we often miss in building this up. We almost never talk about user experience. That was one of my biggest learning. What to learn, how to learn it, the experience, the learning action that you require, what you want your learner to do is what you should be thinking about when you're getting into that. Using an LMS, which is the second bit, you have to master your tools. You have to know what the tool provides you and what the tool doesn't provide you. If you can understand that, your experience and your course becomes much better. Measurement is one of the tools that we have seen both in the African case as well as in the Pakistani case, the cases that we've done. We've trained almost about 400 teachers now in Pakistan itself. Measurement is something that is often missed out, and this is an absolutely brilliant tool that teachers have with the advent of this. The delivery, as Brenda was mentioning, synchronized versus asynchronized. Does it have to be a recorded session? Is it a live session? Is it a part of a recorded session? The cost of delivery, the ease of delivery, bandwidth, gadget availability. I was just talking about some projects that we did, and more than 5 projects that we've done are for the lower social strata in Pakistan alone. And these are extremely low income groups. But the results we've had, the learnings that we've had, and the outcomes that we've had in terms of grades and all of those things are amazing. So bandwidth, gadget availability, you have to adjust your delivery according to that. The fourth one is changes. The changes that have happened. What is the environment like? What is the whole control that the teacher now has that you don't have? A physical environment, a physical class where you could actually control the sounds and the noise around and all of that is not available anymore. Next slide, Brenda. 2 things that we do miss out are faculty mindset. question the basics. As faculty members, you would have to go back and you'd have to go think about all of those things you've been doing for the last 20, 25, 30 years. You have to go about and change the delivery mindset. You, as a teacher, would be looking at not just delivering that in the way you've been doing it for a long time, but rather how you want your students to experience it. And one of the main things is exploring the tools, exploring the tool you're using, whatever tool you're using, whether it's an LMS, whether it's a quizzing function or whatever. Play around with the tool. Don't be afraid to do that. And once you do, you will feel that power itself yourself. The social engagement that we talk about, I think this was one of the most important elements that we found out in the AAU project, because when you have all these peers and the network, I think there were about 30, Nidumo, correct me if I'm wrong, but there were about 30 lead facilitators, but there were about 70 or 80 facilitators who helped the faculty members with the projects, with what they were doing, the activities and all of those things. And that infrastructure and that hand-holding and that social engagement, 90% of the people at the university actually coming up with a new version of something that they've been doing for a long time. I think those achievements were only possible because the networks that were created, the peer groups that were formed, and the hand-holding that came out of this whole group. It's like that. Those were some of the lessons that we had learned, lessons that we think could be applicable right away to Pakistan. I also, at this point, should inform you that Brenda and Dumu have been working with us for the last about 8 to 9 months, advising us, consulting with us, and being very kind in that on how we can bring such an opportunity to Pakistan, such courses and such things and trainings and all of those things. I'm going to hand over to Brenda to explain this particular slide and take the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fazil. So what I thought I'd do is just, if you are thinking about contextualizing this within the Pakistan context, just some thoughts on using a well-known framework on how this could be achieved. And this is what we call a results-based framework, is just to think about, why do you want to do this? What do you see as a vision for your sustainable change? What is it that you want to change? So what is your vision over there? And then we working down from that, talking about what are the immediate outcomes? In other words, what is the change of behavior that you would like to see from either the beneficial environment or actual beneficiaries in terms of personnel? The immediate outcomes are the short-term outcomes, and that could be the increase in awareness, access for beneficiaries to certain products and services, etc. And then one comes down to what does one actually have to do in order to achieve this? And that's where project managers come to the fore. I'm sure many of you have been involved with actual project management frameworks. So what do we want the outputs to be? It could be capacity building skills. How many people do you want to train, etc. Do you want new policies at your institution? Do you need new infrastructure? And then what are the activities that you will need to do in order to achieve the outputs? And then working down further in terms of inputs. Obviously, we often usually have to have some sort of financial input, your human resources with your expertise. In this case, could be your materials. You need some senior management to either be, if it's a national level, it'll be your ministries perhaps supporting this particular initiative. Otherwise, it could be, say, a vice chancellor or senior management at a university. So it needs all of this to happen in order to achieve your ultimate outcome that we're keeping as our goal. Thank you, Fazil.
Thank you very much. That's all the time that we have. We have 2 questions, and any other questions you have, you can ask Linda to forward it to us. they can go to the next slide, and we're going to just stress these questions. Training staff is a common barrier in Pakistan. How do we overcome that? If I may address these questions. Training of staff doesn't have to be in a classroom environment. It can change. There are lots of resources available. We are doing it. A lot of people internationally are doing it. So there are these resources.
Thank you very much, Fazil. Thank you very much, Fazil, Nudomo, and Brenda. Truly, if I was tuned into the whole session, and I saw how you realize the possibilities leading to policies with a purpose, and how you practically implemented the solutions. And this in itself is a very, very motivating and inspiring case study for Pakistanis to present. And I would like to thank you all very much for your time. Fazil, thank you for being a part of this. You have been a change maker in your own right, and we need more pragmatic people like you and your team here, these lovely ladies who joined us. It's been an honor and a privilege. You have made your contributions to the global economy of knowledge. We are just going to, maybe if one of you can just take this one question from the audience. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, but maybe one of you can take this question. How can we align local content with the national curriculum?
Very, very shortly to answer that question, there are a lot of content producers who are doing that in line with the national curriculum. Everybody is doing it in silo. What we need to do is we need to come together and do that. In the national curriculum that's coming in, it's very simple. It's straightforward. It's just an alignment of resources. There are lots of resources available. OERs that Brenda keeps mentioning, she's made me fall in love with them also. Open educational resources, one area. Also, it doesn't have to be a very high kind of a thing. So you can reach us through CXO Global, and we will be, or you have our contacts, we'll be able to help you out with that in any way that we can. OER is one of the answers. The second is collaboration between members or between people who want to develop the same content.
Fazil, thank you so much for that truly insightful answer. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and thank you for watching. If you want to learn more about the speakers today, we've left some links in the description, and they flashed a screen shot as well of their details. You can get in touch with us. Please keep us updated with your comments and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.